Welcome to the Wholesaling Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Chris Arnold. As always, excited for you guys to join us today. So here's what you're going to get. I know we have a lot of people listening that have been in the business, let's say a year or two, and there are so many things you could consider trying to execute on or really implement in your business. And so I thought it'd be a valuable conversation to come in and talk about the 5 most important decisions or things that you should do within your first 12 to 24 months of being in business. How do you like that? And that's what you're going to get by the end of this podcast. And I'm going to do it with my Chief Operating Officer, Cierra Ford, really coming in from her perspective as we sat down and talked about this. She talks to a lot of visionaries and business owners all over the country. So she deals both with really seasoned people as well as people that are newer to the business. And we get this question that's asked to us quite a bit. And that is, should I or should I not within the first 12 to 24 months of my business? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So Cierra Ford, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. So for those that might not know, Chief Operating Officer, et cetera, just give a little bit of background, like how long you and I have been working together and kind of what you're responsible for as a COO.
Yeah, I've been here now for 7 years. So we've been doing this for a long time now. I am responsible for all systems, operation, hiring, firing, making sure the day-to-day is, functioning and everything is running the right way, down to technology to people.
You pretty much run the show is what I say. You're the glue that keeps everything together. Anyone that knows our business and knows you really goes to us. Cierra really understands the day-to-day operation. So let's hop in. Let's get to the meat of this on these kind of 5 most important. So here's the first one. Cierra, what is the most important discipline to really get down within your first 12 to 24 months of being in real estate as an investor? The most important discipline, what do you think it is?
I would definitely say getting in the habit of lead auditing. That's a really important piece. A lot of people kind of overlook it. They feel like if they have, leads coming in, that's enough. It's not. You need to make sure that you're properly tracking those leads. You're really looking into if they're being contacted, notes are being updated, scheduled follow-ups are being set. Because if you're not properly watching them, whether you're the one making those calls or an acquisition manager is making those calls or a prospecting assistant, you need to make sure that each lead is being touched so you're not wasting, important marketing dollars. So making sure that somebody is in there actively looking at the system and the leads coming in. It's going to save you money and it's going to make sure that you're getting everything out of the leads that are coming into your system.
This is an interesting one. So auditing the leads, another word that we might use for that would be actually making sure that the leads are being managed well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how does somebody practically do that? If someone said, okay, Cierra, I hear what you're saying. I definitely understand it's important to make sure that we are maximizing and capitalizing on all the leads that are coming through. But what does an audit actually look like? Like, what would I be auditing if I'm brand new to the business? Like, how do I do that?
So a lot of people think that this is like a, full-time position. It's not. It's somebody to go into your system that is going to go in maybe an hour to 2 hours max a day and look through each lead to make sure that there is a follow-up date set, that there are notes on each lead that has come in, that it is status properly, and that the source is marked properly. That is auditing in a nutshell, making sure that when you're looking at that lead, anybody could come in and take that lead and know exactly where it stood. From the notes to the follow-up date. And that's also going to ensure that you're jumping in the system and contacting leads that have said, not right now, but you're not wasting that opportunity. And it's a huge, huge difference when you're actively going in there and making sure that those leads are not left untouched.
So what if I'm just a solopreneur? Like, I'm listening to this and going, hey, I'm doing some marketing, I'm generating some leads, but I don't really have anyone that's auditing these leads? Do I audit them myself? And can I trust myself to do a good job of that? Do I hunker down and maybe pay someone to do it? Like if I'm listening and I'm going, okay, I know this is important, but like, can I hold myself accountable to a process that needs to be held accountable? Is probably what I'm thinking. Like, how do I do that as a solopreneur?
Honestly, I definitely think it's something that you should bring somebody else in to do. And like I said, it's 1 to 2 hours. And even if you're the only one calling those leads, if your intention is to grow your business, somebody's going to have to come in there and take that role from you. And if your system isn't properly updated and those leads aren't properly status and notated, then how are they going to take those leads over? So if you have to, you can obviously do it yourself, but I don't necessarily think that it's going to be the highest of priorities for somebody to go and audit themselves in a system. But again, 1 to 2 hours a day, if not, bring somebody in for maybe 2 hours a week, just to pop in at the end of the day, touch some leads, look through the system, make sure that it's updated, and move on. If you do insist on doing this yourself, just make sure you're holding yourself to it, that you're setting yourself some type of schedule to look in that system and make sure that all your, I's are dotted and your T's are crossed by the end of the day and everything has been updated. So when you are ready to move on and to pass this position over to somebody else, like acquisition or prospecting, that they can come in and see where you left off with each individual lead, and you're not wasting any opportunity there.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, it's funny. I go back to the first coach that I had, Cierra. His name was Bob Corcoran. Bob Corcoran's still around. That guy's been coaching people forever. But he said, Chris, I want to tell you that in all of my years of coaching, and this guy's been coaching for a few decades at this point, he said, I can tell you that the number one problem that I see working with people at all levels within real estate is the mismanagement of leads. And I'll never forget that, because that was one of the first lessons that he taught me, being the first coach that I ever hired. And that was one thing that always stuck with me. And he's right. What you're talking about is really understanding that the discipline of auditing your leads, managing your leads is so important. And Cierra, I would guess that the longer you put this off, the harder this discipline's probably to come back and do. Would you agree with that? Like you just kind of get out of the habit and it's like, I'll get to that at some point.
Well, not only that, but it's kind of creating a mess. So you're out of the habit, but also when you finally decide to bring somebody into that, it's a lot of backtracking. That's a lot of potential wasted opportunity there. If your follow-up date isn't set and you have somebody that says, call me back at the first of the year, how are you going to remember that? That's a wasted opportunity. So you're going to either have to go back to the beginning of your system to look through all of these leads and potentially try to contact again. But you're also potentially making some of those leads upset that you forgot about them. You wasted that opportunity. You're trying to go back now and they know that you didn't follow up. So it's setting the standard for yourself, for your sellers, for your team. You're making sure that you're really doing what you need to do in your system with every lead.
And just practically, if you're listening, you're like, well, I've never even hired anyone. I don't know that process. When we're talking about, a couple hours a day or maybe even 5 hours a week where someone's just popping in the system for an hour a day. I mean, you have the ability to hire overseas, at, $3-5 an hour. If you decide to go that route, of course, someone stateside, Cierra, I know you would say you could probably pick up someone for maybe about $12 per hour. So we're talking about a low cost for you to have a lead manager like this for just a handful of hours per week. So on the practical side of kind of hiring or paying this person, Cierra, anything else for someone that's just going, hey, I get this idea, I'm just not quite certain what my first couple steps are on even finding or paying somebody like this?
Yeah, for this type of position, honestly, I would go even lower than 12. This is an admin position. It's auditing. You're not making this person a salesperson. They're not going to be communicating with people. They're really going in and looking at the data. They're looking at the lead itself and making sure that each lead was followed up with. They're not calling, they're not prospecting. So, it's a very simple position to hire for. It's somebody that could do this in their living room, each night while their kids are running around. It's something that you could really find somebody for a very low pay, even probably under $10 an hour, just to jump in a couple times, just to make sure everything is done. So it's
There
a
you
simple
go.
hire for sure.
Even less
Yeah.
than I thought. So again, this is a really low investment if it's something that you wanted to outsource for sure. So let's go to number two. Number one, we talked about the most important discipline. Let's go to number two. What is the most important hire that a person, a real estate investor, will make within the first 12 to 24 months of being in the business?
Well, I know based on, number one, people would assume we would say lead manager, but it's not. It's definitely a closing manager, somebody to take on those responsibilities of dealing with title, curing title, communicating with, the seller and the buyer on the back end, making sure that they're showing up to the closing table. The reason we say that this is the most important hire within like that first year to 2 years is you want to be focused on generating contracts. Even if you bring in, I see a lot of investors will bring in an acquisition manager before a closing manager, which is crazy because now you're doubling the contracts on the front end, but you're trying to close even more contracts on the back end yourself. That's not going to work. So just because you have more contracts doesn't mean you're going to have more closings if there's not somebody in that position. So having somebody solely focus on closing those properties so you can start to, get some additional help, whether it's a prospecting assistant or, an acquisition manager to generate more contracts, you need that person closing them in order to do that. So having that one individual really communicating and learning and understanding title is huge. I have talked to so many investors that spend their additional time chasing sellers and buyers to get them to a closing table. It's not the most effective use of time for them to be chasing on the back end. Get your contracts, even on disposition side, meet your investors, but don't be communicating to title. Somebody can do it better. Somebody will make sure that closing date or time is down if their sole focus is on closing title, closing properties, communicating with both sides. So that would be number one for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting. I go back, Cierra, before you and I ever met, I've been doing real estate for 15 years. The very first hire I made, and this is when I was on the brokerage side. So for those of you guys that don't know, I actually did retail and became a broker before I started on the investment side. That was just the route that I went down. And my very first hire was a closing coordinator. And I can go back and tell you that was one of the biggest significant jumps in my revenue was when I hired her. And then when we started the investment company, the very first hire that we made on the investment side was, guess what? A closing coordinator. And that was actually Taylor, who's still with us today. So she's been with us forever. And again, saw a significant jump in revenue. So I'm just going to speak from a revenue standpoint on this. And that is the fact that if you're wanting to increase revenue, if you can focus more on getting more contracts, focus on income producing activities and get rid of, shuffling paperwork and dealing with the title company and getting a property to close, you're going to be able to double down on what you do best. And so I saw 2 jumps in my revenue, both on the retail investment side when I did this, Cierra. I don't know if we ever talked about that, but that's true.
I don't think we have, but, and it makes sense though. A lot of people think it's just about the contract. Contracts mean nothing if they're not closing. You can have 1 million contracts, but if you're not getting them to the closing table and funded, they mean nothing. So it really takes somebody that can focus. And you mentioned Taylor, like I will have conversations with Taylor where she blows me away just knowing the terminology, but it's because she's been able to focus on learning the terminology and understanding how to cure specific title issues. I would have never been able to do that. I don't think you would have either. That's, you really need the time to figure that stuff out. And she definitely has that skill and time required. So definitely closing manager all the way.
All right. So let's go to the next one. What is the most important piece of technology that an investor should pick up within the first 12 to 24 months of being in the business? Most important piece of technology.
This one's a no-brainer. It is 100% a CRM. I hear these investors all the time telling me they're working off of an Excel sheet. Oh my gosh, no. You've got to get it into a system. It's where everything starts. It is very difficult to continue to track off of an Excel sheet after, the first month of leads coming in. You need something that can house all of your data, that you can make sure that follow-up dates are set, that there's notes there. And think of it from the view of expansion. You're not going to be a single, person forever in this business. Hopefully, everybody will get to the point where they're building their team. And somebody needs to be able to jump in there and know where you left off, just like the lead audit. So having something on an Excel, it's doing you a disservice. You're losing opportunity. There's always going to be a time where your note's not there, or a follow-up date isn't set. So get yourself a CRM. They're not expensive. You can do something like RE Simply that just blows everything out of the water. It's under $100, and you can have everything in that system. That's the key. It really is. Getting something that you can just house contacts. It doesn't need to be some fancy system, but it definitely is a must. And it's a mistake I see a lot of people making. Yeah. Excels and notepads. You can't run a business off Excels and notepads.
This is what I had. You're going to laugh at this. So I go back to me sitting in my cubicle the first year that I was in business, right? So this is going back like 15 years. This is before, I think people even really understood the value of CRMs, because technology was still getting there. So there wasn't really CRMs specifically for the real estate industry at that time. They were brand new. But I had Post-it notes. And so I would take the sticky Post-it notes and I would line them on the back of my cubicle to keep up with all of my listings and price reductions. And literally, I had a moving Post-it note system on the back of my cubicle. And I remember thinking myself at the time, I was being really great about being organized. At least I had everything written down, and I had this nice system of moving them around. But I was I know you're laughing, so far off on how organized, automated, efficient that I could be by utilizing technology and getting away from Post-it notes. But that's where I started. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, and it's funny because I hear people say all the time, well, I'm just not big enough yet to have a CRM. I'm just not there yet. And that is such a mistake. It's such a mistake because, if you start the habit now and you start building that system, not only is that marketing money, you're going to get a return faster because you're going to have an appropriate follow-up system. But also, if you wait until you're big to get a CRM, that's going to be a huge mess to import and get into that system. It's going to be time consuming and it's going to be a heavy lift. Start now, start fresh, make sure that you're taking advantage of every lead that comes through, your system. And it's not an expensive price point for a good system. You can incorporate something quickly, start now, and not have to have a mess to clean up later when you intend to expand. So it's never too soon for CRM.
This is a true story. You can go back and look at my P&Ls years back. And I can remember when we did this, this is when we used Podio, right? Because Podio was like the CRM system for real estate. But you can go back and see a spike over a 3-month period in my revenue in the middle of the year. And I can remember a financial person looking at that going, what did you guys do during that 3 months that gave you that spike and that increase moving forward? And I go, well, that's actually when we implemented our CRM into our business. That's a true story. Because all of a sudden we weren't dropping leads and we weren't making mistakes and we were keeping up on contract processes and we had systems and started utilizing automation. And, all those things were making sure that we weren't dropping balls. And so fundamentally what you were seeing us was getting everything we could out of everything we had because now we had a CRM system. So that was a huge, huge jump for us as well. Well, I know, hey, what we're telling you is if you're listening, it doesn't matter if it's Podio or whatever system that you want to use. We just want to encourage you to utilize a CRM. I know people always ask us what we use. We use RE Simply, and we just like that system because it literally houses everything you could ever need in one spot, and they do it for $100. So rather than, needing 10 different pieces of software, this software now does what's called an end-to-end user experience. So if you're interested in RE Simply, you can check that out. Everyone always asks us for a promo code for stuff that, we talk about that's been valuable for us. So just go to RE Simply, and that's RESIMPLI.com, and put /Chris, and that'll give you all the discounts that go with that. But just hear us out. Doesn't matter if it's RE Simply, we don't care what it is. Just make sure within the first 12, 24 months, I think Cierra would tell you probably sooner than that, get yourself into a good CRM. Like, don't wait that long to get that done. So let's go to number 4, Cierra. Most important skill that I'm going to develop in the first 12 to 24 months. What is that skill?
Hands down, it is tracking your KPIs. It's a huge piece of the puzzle, is making sure that you understand what your numbers are in your business, what your metrics are, your KPIs. I see people make this mistake. They're putting so much money into marketing, and then they're like, well, I don't know if it's working. I'm going to try this instead. Well, you wouldn't ask that question if you were checking your KPIs. You would know exactly what your dollar per dollar return on each campaign was. You would make sure that all of that information is clearly in one place, whether it is a spreadsheet or, a system like Clipfolio. You need to make sure you have that information. And I think the most important, tip I could give people for this is, tracking numbers. Tracking numbers and making sure that each marketing piece that you have has a designated tracking number associated with it. That will help you. And that's just a phone number. That's a phone number for each marketing campaign, which will help you know how many leads you're getting from each campaign, how much money you are spending will obviously come out of your bank. You'll be able to associate that with that tracking number, and you'll be able to clearly see what you're getting for your dollar per dollar return for all of your marketing.
Absolutely. So I want to break this down a little bit. Wouldn't you say a great way to describe not tracking your KPIs is that you're just flying completely blind? Like, you're just spending money, but you have no idea what that money's producing. Like, how would you, I call it flying blind. It's crazy to me that you would spend money on marketing and not track your KPIs or your metrics or your returns. How would you describe it if someone was
throwing money away? Absolutely throwing money away. If you don't know where that money is going and how it's benefiting your company, you might as well just start burning it now. Because you're going to start to make mistakes and investing in campaigns that you think are working. And it happens to us all the time. We're like, oh, A, B, and C marketing stream is working. But then at the end of the month, Chris, myself, and our marketing director get on a call and we look at the numbers on paper. And I will tell you probably 9 times out of 10, it's completely opposite of what we think. It's the whole fact versus feel thing. It's factual information at the end of the month. It's what we feel in the beginning of the month, because the numbers are actually telling the true story.
Yeah. And what I like you saying is, okay, at least put a separate number on all of your marketing sources, or if you're utilizing online, do a separate URL, because at that point you can at least go back at some point and know that that information is at least being tracked historically, and then you can start to organize it. So even if you're not like pulling all the data together this month, at least get a system going that's tracking it, and you can come back and make sense of it a little bit later. And I think that that's a valuable tip as well.
Absolutely. And I think we see people make this mistake, even, newer students that come in. And they're running all of their marketing to one central phone number that's ringing. So deciding if that's coming off of a Google ad or radio or direct mail, it's impossible to do that. You can't do that if it's all running to the same phone number. So just getting a couple of separate phone numbers for each campaign is going to tell you what is actually working and what isn't. And so each dollar you're spending is actually going and being accounted for. So you know if you're making the right decision each month when you spend those marketing dollars.
Agreed. I think you guys have heard us mention this a couple times at this point if you tune in on a regular basis, and we're just going to keep telling you until you do it. And that is, you've got to track your metrics. You've got to track your KPIs. So let's go to number 5, the last one. What do you feel like the most important investment that a real estate investor will make within the first 12 to 24 months in their business? The most important investment?
Growing and maintaining that buyer's list. You know, you need the buyer's list in order to sell properties. So if that comes down to just a simple marketing system, like Active Campaign, for example, you can blast out all of your properties within Active Campaign, but you can also house all of your buyers in that system. You can link it back to your website. So the lead is feeding into that spot. So you always have a system with up-to-date buyers, and you have a way to market to them. You can also segregate the list. So it's not even just Active Campaign. There's multiple systems that do this. But again, what I hear people telling us is they have it all in Excel. They have all their buyers in Excel, and they're using, Constant Contact. Constant Contact can be an effective system for specific marketing. I would never recommend something like MailChimp or Constant Contact for marketing your properties. The spam rating is just so high. So it's important to not only have your buyers in a central location, but also have a system to blast properties out that aren't going to increase that spam rating. So your buyers are actually seeing it. So those two go really hand in hand, growing and maintaining that buyer's list in a proper system that you can market out of. So you're actually selling these properties, not just getting them.
But I agree. I mean, your buyer's list is one of the really only proprietary things you'll have in your business. It will separate you from every other investor in the area. Whoever has the best, most highest quality buyer's list in any city, I guarantee you is going to be making the most money, because they're selling, you're selling your properties more efficiently at a higher price because you've got a good buyer's list. You're then, JVing with other people that don't have buyers lists. So you're making money off of wholesaling, which is another example of how to do that. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to make money. So let's give a couple tips here. You're saying that the most important investment is my buyers list. And on top of that, making sure that I have a great system like Active Campaign to blast that through so I don't get shut down. But what would be a couple practical tips on how to get started on building a good buyers list? Like kind of baby step 1 and baby step 2. What would you say?
Yeah. Honestly, my recommendation is to start scrubbing Facebook, whether you're doing this yourself or you find somebody to bring on to help you do this a couple hours a week. Have them go into the Facebook groups or you go into the Facebook groups and start scrubbing Facebook for buyers. It's practically free, besides if you decide to pay somebody to do this, but it's going to help you build that list. It's going to help you start to get buyers in your area. You can also utilize Craigslist by looking through investment properties that are listed and grabbing email addresses from that. And Bigger Pockets is another option. So scraping is really the first step. Get in there and start to scrape the systems and try to get as many buyers as possible. In order not to spam people, though, it is really important that you don't just throw them into a system and without their permission and start blasting to them. We don't do that. That's, it's not okay. It's going to create a spam score that is way higher. So whether there's 2 kind of steps you could take. You can contact each of those buyers before you put them in this system individually and obviously ask for permission, or you can put them on a smaller campaign to send a blast to ask them basically if they're interested in being a part of the targeted list where they're going to get more properties. So we're not throwing them into a system and just shooting properties at them. We're taking time with them. We're putting them into a system in a separate list specifically, and then we're marketing to that list and asking them if they want to be a part of our ongoing campaigns. If they raise their hand, then we put them on our targeted list and they start receiving properties. If they deny, then they're just removed. We take them off and we don't bother them again. So it's really about taking time to look in these avenues like Facebook, Craigslist, BiggerPockets, and start gathering these names, but also making sure that you're separating them from your massive targeted list or your main list. So you're taking time with each person.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. So let's do a recap here, right? So what we're saying is in the first 12 to 24 months, and Cierra's saying, hey, based on my experience of being a chief operating officer, talking with a lot of different people around the country, she's saying, hey, I think your most important discipline in your first 12 to 24 months is lead auditing. Your most important hire is your closing manager. Your most important piece of technology is your CRM. Your most important skill is learning to track your metrics and your KPIs. And your most important investment in the first 12 to 24 months is your buyer's list. Great topic. I think this really, Cierra, in my opinion, raised the priorities of the business because there's so many things. You know, it's like a whirlwind going on in that first 12 to 24 months. There's a lot of shiny objects. And so I think that this podcast really pulls out and says, hey, there's a lot to focus on, but here are 5 of the most important things to focus on as well. So I love it. I love it. I think it was a great stuff to share today. And to the rest of you guys tuning in, you guys know that we are helping people set up radio all across the country. Cierra, we've been doing this for coming on a year now. It's been crazy to see the results with a lot of the students because you're really involved in that with me. I think that we've set up more than half of the country at this point. Isn't that right? Something like 55% of the United States.
Yeah, I think we're getting up to that 60%.
Something around 60%. And it's been super cool to now know that we've got the data that this radio works in small markets, mid markets, large markets. And I think the most rewarding part for us are the students that we get to talk to that come back and go, this was an absolute game changer for the business. So that's kind of the rewarding piece of what we're doing. So as always, if you're interested in 2021, to jump in on radio before we end up selling out the whole US and getting what we consider, and actually, I don't even consider, I know at this point mathematically that radio has been hands down the best marketing channel for us over the last 10 years. Go to wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Again, wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Book a call. Would love for you to become a part of the family and what we're doing. And not only will we help you set up radio, we've got some really cool stuff on the alumni side in which we will be doing things like we just did on this podcast and showing you how to actually take what you're doing and build it into a business as well. Because we love to help people get from working in the business to on the business too. So Cierra, thanks for coming in today. As always, coming in, sharing your experience and your knowledge. And to the rest of you guys for tuning in, thank you so much. And until next time, we will catch you soon when we add more value. Talk to you later.